Yo, it's Waifu Belector, and I'm here today to talk about Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, an absolute mouthful of a game. And I'm just gonna give some of my thoughts about the game and anything around the game that it makes me think of. So you'll get some of what's good about it, what's bad about it, and what's just an indifferent fact. So let's get into it. And honestly, I'm not even sure where to begin, so let's just start with this. For anyone who doesn't know, this game is a remaster of a PSP game from 2007 or some shit. I did not play the original game. I've never played the original Final Fantasy VII even. In fact, Final Fantasy VII Remake was the first Final Fantasy game that I ever played. I've since gone back and played 15, 13, and 12. And that's honestly as far back as I'm willing to go. The sheer oldness of it all just looks to be so out of hand when you go back further, but I digress. So yes, I did not experience the original version of Crisis Core, but based on the fact that they remastered and released it after Final Fantasy VII Remake, I came to the conclusion that this would be essential to the experience if I planned on playing the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And let me say this, after finishing Crisis Core Reunion, I did have fun, and yes, it did feel essential. The story felt like I should know this, you know? Whether it actually ends up being important to the events of the remake sequel is up in the air, but it felt important. It felt rewarding to learn, you know? I'm glad that I know this information about Zack and Angeal and Genesis and whatever the fuck is going on. So anyway, let's talk more about the game and gameplay itself. To no one's surprise, this game is indeed structured like a 2007 PSP game. Even the way Zack walks is very PSP-like, but what I mean is that the game is structured more arcade-like in a sense, where they've removed a lot of the filler material and long drawn-out battles that you'd see not just in Final Fantasy, but almost in any JRPG. Instead, we get more straight-to-the-point encounters that don't last ridiculous amounts of time, and there's not much of a reason to halt your game and grind out levels because everything's too strong for you. Crisis Core really is just this super streamlined version of a Final Fantasy game, to the point where it's even like, yeah, summons and limit breaks, don't worry about those. It's all just on a fucking slot machine during your fights, and you can just do certain ones randomly. If you don't know what I'm talking about, your most powerful attacks in the game are tied to something called the DMW System. It's basically a slot machine that rolls while you're fighting, and if certain pictures or numbers line up, you get different benefits. 3 pictures of Sephiroth, you can do Octaslash. 3 pictures of Ifrit, you can summon Ifrit. Landed on 777s? Here, have a bunch of experience. 3 pictures of a Moogle, all your materia levels up, and you know, all that stuff is out of your control. So you might just completely run through something or barely survive something that should have killed you just because you were getting good spins. And I'll be honest, I don't hate this. Really, I honestly prefer this to how summons work sometimes in Final Fantasy, because it might have been 7 Remake, or I can't remember which one. It might have been a different one, so don't quote me on that, on 7 Remake, but the game would be like, congratulations, you can summon now, but you can only summon in specific fights where we say you can summon, and the summons won't win you those fights. You'll actually need the summons to even stand a chance. And at that point, it's just like, oh, well, this is more of a set piece than anything, you know? And summons aren't like that in every Final Fantasy game that I've played, but, you know, they teeter, you know, sometimes they're just kind of set piecey, sometimes they're an actual mechanic, and, you know, if my choices are summon in the few moments where I'm allowed to summon because the game said I could summon, or just randomly be able to summon at random times, I think I'm choosing the random one. But honestly, the stringent summon when we say summon thing is, pretty on brand from what I've experienced with Final Fantasy. It surprisingly has some of the most restrictive RPGs in the genre, honestly. Don't get me wrong, most of the ones I've played are plenty good, but the only time I actually felt an open sense of variety in how I could approach battles was in the Zodiac Age version of Final Fantasy XII. And I'm not trying to say that Crisis Core's DMW adds a sense of variety, because it doesn't. I just like that it doesn't waste my time pretending I have a choice, But yes, the entire game just plays like a streamlined Final Fantasy. And if you do want to spend some time getting some extra levels and whatnot, there are a bunch of optional missions that give out rewards. And even these little side missions have had the fat trimmed off of them. The missions are so fast, usually just a couple of short fights and then you're done. And through the missions, you can get new images to appear in your DMW, which provide, extra benefits to your randomized slot machine. You can also get extra accessory slots and a fair bit of extra challenge from the tougher missions. And you can just jump into the missions from any save point, so you can just get some needed levels at basically any moment. If a boss encounter or something stumps you, you can just jump into a mission, get some XP, get some levels, and then try it again. Same goes for the shops in terms of just accessing it anywhere. You can just pause the game and buy what you need. Again, very streamlined. And the combat specifically feels like a little arcadey, dumbed down version of what we were doing in 7 Remake, and I don't mean that as a bad thing. The whole game to me just comes off as a nice little extra slice of Final Fantasy content to play. I feel like the idea the developers had was like, hey guys, this story is important to what we're gonna do, so we gave you all the tools and touch-ups to have fun, just make sure you get through this. I mean, that's what it feels like the devs would tell you before you play, because you gotta think, this is a remaster, so the foundation of this game is old. So of course this game really fails to be astounding or revolutionary, but it seems like all the work went into making sure that this old ass game isn't a complete slog to get through, because the story's going to end up being very important. That's what I'm getting from it anyway. And I think they succeed at that, making sure that it's not a slog and that it's fun to play, because I had fun playing it. And there was I think it was chapter 4 or some shit like that, where you first meet Aerith. Holy fuck, that chapter sucks. It's so boring. It's so fucking boring. It's terrible. But yeah, and then there's some other lulls later in the game and stuff like that. But when you're actually playing, for the most part, the majority of the game, it just goes and it's fun, and you don't have to do too much thinking, and it's just an overall good slice of Final Fantasy to have, I think. But yeah, I had fun. If I had to put a number on it, I'm thinking 7 out of 10. This is a good game, and it's a hell of a remaster from what I can tell. But yeah, feel free to let me know what you think of it if you played this, or just let me know if you're planning on playing it. Maybe I said something that made you want to play it, who knows. But anyway, until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and the Moogles in this game look like Muppets. Goodbye.